بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Yang amat baik, Tuan Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. Yang amat berbahagia Tuan Dr. Sisti Asma Mohamad. Yang berbahagia Datuk Profesor Dr. Zia Mohamad, Director Higher Education Leadership Academy. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I would like to humbly express my gratitude to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for with His permission and His pleasure, we all can gather here tonight for this special event. On behalf of the organizers, namely Universiti Sains Islam Malaysia, USIM, Akademi Kepimpinan Pengajian Tinggi, AKAB, Universiti Islam Antarabangsa Malaysia, ICIL2011, would like to bid special welcome and heartiest thanks and appreciation to Yang Amat Berbahagia Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, our former Prime Minister, to this dinner reception tonight, and to give a keynote address on the topic, the impact of Middle East and Northern African crisis, a lesson to Muslim countries. Ladies and gentlemen, for our information, the conference has started this morning. We had very good sessions in the morning as well as forum in the afternoon. And tonight we will continue with a special delivery from our former Prime Minister to further highlight to us on some of the lessons or things that we can learn from what is happening in the Muslim world today. As we are fully aware, in the last 10 years or so, and most recently, one by one, we are seeing the Muslim leadership succumb to pressure, and one by one, the government of this country fell and been replaced by new government. If we were to build new leadership, particularly for the Muslims of the future, we really need to understand what is happening, so that this can become a good lesson for us. This can give us a good guidance into how should we develop our leaders for the future. And this is very important, so that we can sustain and continue the legacy of Muslim leadership around the world. So this is the theme for the keynote address tonight. And we are very fortunate and very blessed, in fact very delighted and honored to have Yang Amat Berbahagia Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, who is willingly to accept our invitation to come and share his view and thoughts and observations on this matter. As we are all very well aware that Tun has perhaps friends with some of the leaders of this Muslim world. And Tun, Mr. Prime Minister, Malaysia for 22 years and also been actively involved in the OIC. I, for one, without further ado, because I think what is important is to listen to what Tun has to deliver. For tonight, we will start with the dinner and then we'll continue with the session. So I would like to take this opportunity once again to welcome all the distinguished guests and also the participants. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And I must say this is an overwhelming occasion because the request to attend has been so much that we have to humbly refuse many of those requested to be here tonight. So for those of you who are here and together with us, I must say on behalf of the organizers, our heartfelt, sincere thanks to you for giving us all this support. So I hope you will enjoy the dinner. I hope you will enjoy the keynote address tonight. And we'll continue tomorrow with another session of the seminar. Sincerely hope that this will be the beginning of our initiative to seeing the sustainability of Islamic leadership in the Muslim world. Sekian, wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Yang Berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Mohamad for your insightful speech.
Yang berbahagia lagi dikasihi Tun Dr. Siti Asma Muhammad. Terima kasih Tun kerana dapat bersama. Seterusnya, Kursi Ahli Lembaga Pengarah dan Pucuk Pimpinan USIM, Universiti Sains Islam Malaysia, Pucuk Pimpinan Kementerian Pendidikan Tinggi, Pucuk Pimpinan AKEB, Universiti Islam Antarabangsa, para profesor, datuk, datin, seterusnya hadirin yang saya hormati sekalian. It's a great honor to us all to have a very distinguished speaker, a great Malaysian personality, and if I say he's the best Prime Minister we ever had, that might offend some people, but my heart says so. When Tun was in USIM for a year ago, receiving his doctorate, I asked Tun, what number is this? How many have you received? He said, I lost count already, but maybe 15. So just now, at the lobby, I asked Tun again the same question. Now I remember, more than 20. Congratulations Tun for the latest two. The last one from overseas. And now he's here with me, with us all. And there is a secret of his heart. In his memoir, he said that you must always keep yourself active, doing work all the time, and then only you'll be healthy in his memoir. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be very brief with my introduction. Birthday, people know ask how old is he and how come he looks so young. He had 2 birthdays, and that we have in common. Tun. I have 2 birthdays. Tun's second birthday is on the 20th December. My second birthday on the 19th December. 1 day earlier. But our real birthdays are different. on the secret of how could he keep his hair. He looks so young, 86, but looks 68. I will refer you to his memoir, page 582, 584, 3 pages. So please buy the book and refer to get the secret from Tun. I got my book. I'm not sure whether 80 ringgit or 100 ringgit, but my 2 daughters bought for me for my birthday because they knew that I'm the great fan of Tun Mahathir. The book, the memoir, I want to advise the delegate from overseas to buy one, to get one. 809 pages. Approximately, if our PhD thesis, social science, humanities is 60,000 words per thesis. So the Tun Mahathir's memoir is 272,000 approximately, which is 4.5 PhD thesis. So it's really worth reading. So, okay. In his young days, Tun is very active in politics, party, and also writing to Sunday Times. Of course, one of his best books is The Malay Dilemma, Menghadapi Cabaran, Small Business Enterprise, several articles, and also Mahathir the writer. And from his writings, he managed to get some fame, some money from the Straits Times. That's where they can afford to buy a PSA 250cc motorcycle and taking Tun Asma Muhammad Ali for a private tuition in the boat, either at a Bedok Beach or maybe Sungai Kalang. And he said that, Tun says in his book, they celebrated another important date every year, which is 23rd of April. Because this is the day Tun was very shivering, and suddenly he said, I love you, Asma. And the answer was that, I love you too, Dad. Check that. That's also in the memoir. So I think, just on the lighter note, not too serious about tonight's introduction because we know Tun very well. But what we are going to present to hear from him will be something very serious, rather serious, that we are very concerned about the Muslim world in the Middle East and North Africa. If I could recall, there are about 2 or 3 systems of government in the Middle East: monarchy, absolute monarchy, republic, presidency, military rule, and possibly democracy. So without further ado, I'll invite you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang berbahagia Datuk Profesor Maulana Sheikh, yang berbahagia Nancy Suknor, Datuk Muda, ahli-ahli daripada Universiti Mohamad, Tuan-tuan Muhammad Al-Azim sekalian. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Firstly, I would like to say thank you to University Science Islam for inviting me to dinner. I appreciate the dinner much more than what I have to pay. My payment is usually in the form of having talk. It's not something difficult. So people like to talk and I love to talk. Overall, I love to hear my own voice, not in singing, but in talk. The subject for tonight is very interesting. It is the effect of the Middle East and North African crisis, a lesson for the Muslim countries. It is fortunate, of course, that I left my job as Prime Minister, because if I had stayed on, I would have learned quite a lot of lessons also. Today, a lot of people call me a dictator. I was a dictator during the time when I was Prime Minister. Now, had the crisis happened then, I could have corrected myself and people would not call me a dictator. But I decided to leave the post before I got put out. So now I feel that these lessons are meant for other people. Now, as you know, not many Muslim countries take to the democratic ideology very much. They are much more inclined to have a feudal or authoritarian type of government. And feudal and authoritarian government suffer from one thing, and that is a sense of unlimited power, feeling that you can do just about anything and nobody can stop you from doing it or get rid of you. But when somebody tries to overthrow you, you react in a very harsh manner. And that harsh manner may include jailing and executing your enemies. Once you do that, you live in fear. You feel that if you give up your power, then you yourself may be jailed, you yourself may be executed. So in order to stay in power, you increase the level of your oppression of the people. In time, you feel you are no longer liable for whatever happens to the people. You do not really care for them. And when you feel like this, then people will find that you are really an authoritarian ruler who cares not for the people at large. They will tolerate this for some time. But after some time, even the mildest of them would begin to think about revolt, would begin to think about overthrowing the ruler. If the ruler gets wind of this, then the likelihood is that the ruler will increase the pressures that he applies to the people. More people would be jailed, more people would be executed, and the ruler himself feels more frightened of the people. And the only way he can make sure that the people cannot get at him was to continue to stay in power. And sometimes, of course, you even think of creating a dynasty. You want your son or your brother or some members of your family to succeed you, so that even if you are dead, nobody would dig into your past and take some action on your successes. So this is a process that keeps on growing. From being a very mild dictator, you become more and more authoritarian, because to preserve your position, you have to use force to oppress people. And when you oppress people, you begin to fear them, that they might retaliate. And if they overthrow overthrow you, then they are likely to take action against you, maybe even to jail you or to prosecute you. So, because of that fear, you increase the level of authoritarian rule that you practice, and so it escalates to the point where there is no return. You have to be oppressive because you are afraid. If you are overthrown, then people will take action against you, and because you fear of that possibility, then you try to sustain yourself by being more and more oppressive. This is what normally happens when you have authoritarian governments. Initially they can be quite good. Initially they may even be welcomed by the people. Sometimes, of course, these are the very same people who overthrew the previous government. And then they got into power. And once they get into power, they forget that it was the misbehavior of the previous government which led them to overthrow that government. But once they get into power, they forget the lesson. They forget the lesson and they emulate or repeat the ways of the people, of the dictators they had overthrown before. So this is almost a normal process. Now, perhaps there comes a time when the dictator wishes to change his ways, to be more lenient. But he's not going to be able to do this because people have begun to distress, to feel oppressed by him, and they would not believe in any effort that he makes in order to present himself as a likable leader or ruler. This is what we see happening in the Arab countries and in North Africa. They can be probably at the first quite popular, having overthrown the previous government. But over time, they began to have megalomania. They become very insensitive to people. They did not do the things that they thought should be done before they overthrew the previous government. They began to copy the very things that they loathed before, the very thing that they disliked in the previous government. They began to do these things themselves. This happens in some of the countries that we see. The leaders in these countries were not born as leaders. They were not. So far, the monarchies seem to have escaped, but it is the leaders who somehow or other seized power who have now been overthrown. And this has happened to them because they forget the lessons that they should have learned from the behavior of the previous government whom they overthrew. Now we come to the stage where we are watching this process being repeated. Are we learning anything from what is happening in North Africa? I'm not so sure that we are learning anything because we are very poor students, we Muslims. We don't learn much from what happens to our ancestors. We don't learn much from what happens to other people. We don't learn much from what happens to ourselves even. So because of that, I have a great deal of worry as to whether the governments that will replace the government would actually deliver what they have promised to deliver. Of course, today everybody speaks about setting up democratic governments. I have a feeling that they feel that merely by setting up a democratic government, everything would be solved, things would be fine, people would be happy, people would support the government. But it's not going to be that all the time. A democratic government is one of the most difficult systems of government that you can manage. This is because the power is not completely concentrated on the leader. He is subject to periodical tests by the people. He has to present himself for elections, and he may not win. He will not win if during the past term he had not delivered on his promises. And delivering on promises made during election time is not the easiest of things. For example, Mr. Obama promised that he would close down Guantanamo Bay detention camp 2 days after he became Prime Minister, became President. But I think it's been more than 2 days now. Guantanamo is still there. And not only has he not withdrawn his troops, he has a new surge, meaning to say that he sent more troops instead of withdrawing. He is going to withdraw, but he's going to keep some control over the territories where American soldiers had died. So, making promises during election is about the easiest thing. And it is even easier if you don't think you are going to win. Then you don't have to implement anything. So this is the problem with a democracy. Just because you vote a person into power does not mean that you will have a democratic government or that the government that you choose will work. Every country has got minorities, they have got people of different descent or ethnic groups, and they all want to promote themselves. So the people would be split up into many small groups. So as democracy allows people to set up their own parties, it is possible that when the previous government is overthrown and a new government is going to adopt, to be elected through a democratic process, there will be so many contestants for the post in government, to be the president or the prime minister or the ministers. When you have a lot of parties, then it is difficult to find one party which has an absolute majority. Usually the people will be split up into small groups, and the parties which represent them would not be able to get more than 50% of the seats in parliament. Then of course you are going to have trouble trying to form governments. You may form coalitions, but coalitions do not work very well. Of course, in Malaysia it worked for the last 50 years. There are signs of cracking at the moment, but it worked because the coalition in Malaysia is slightly different from the coalitions that will be formed after elections. The Malaysian coalition is a pre-election coalition in which the parties came together, hopefully to be able to help each other win. And because they help each other win, they have been able to manage, they have been able to get sufficient majority, usually about 2/3, to form very strong governments. But a post-election coalition implies weakness. A post-election coalition is formed because no single party has been able to garner more than 50% of the seats in parliament. They are all minorities, and in order to form the coalition, the biggest party perhaps would invite some small party to join them and form a coalition with maybe a slight majority in parliament. This is when the tail wags the dog, because the small party, knowing very well that if it pulls out, the government would fall, would threaten the big party and demand all kinds of things like giving them certain ministries and the like. Every now and then they would threaten to walk out and bring down the government. And such government would spend their time not running the country, not developing the country, but rather to try and keep together with the small partner that they have. So a democracy does not work simply because it is democratic. If you take democracy to mean the right of people to vote, yes, we can do that, but the people are not always very careful about the people that they choose. Sometimes people who have no idea about anything get chosen to become members of parliament, and of course you soon find out that they are really unsuitable. But because they had the votes, therefore they have a right to sit in parliament and maybe even to form governments. So when we have such a situation, the desire to keep on being in power may force these people to use underhand means in order to stay in power. Then we are going to have a very troubled democracy, and the people will soon begin to dislike the government, and maybe they will overthrow the government in the next election, or if they don't do that, they might even overthrow the government through violent means. So these are things that the incoming government, the people who had overthrown the dictatorial regime, will have to face. These are the things that they will have to face. And being countries which have never been democratically managed, they're going to find things very hard. One of the things that is required in a democracy is a willingness to lose. Everybody is willing to win. But if you are not willing to lose, then when you lose, you are going to create problems. There are countries where the losing party will just destabilize the country. And when this happens, people again will be very disappointed. But if you look back at the lessons that had been learned from the previous government, you will find that there is nothing to learn from the previous government. Nothing to learn even from the overthrow of government. Because what is needed is to have an understanding of the kind of governments that needs to be set up in order to progress the nation. Now, if you have no idea about progressing the nation, developing the nation, providing the needs of the nation, looking after the people in the nation, then of course you have done nothing. And it means that you are not only needing to look at what is happening to the Arab and African countries. You have to look at other countries. If you look at the African countries today, what do you learn from it? You learn how to overthrow government. That is not going to do you any good, because once you get into the habit of overthrowing government, and you have learned a lesson on overthrowing government, every government that comes along you overthrow. Then of course you are not going to get any benefit from overthrowing government. there are cases where repeatedly the government would be overthrown. That comes from learning only the lesson regarding overthrowing government. But if you want the overthrow to pay dividends, if you want the new government to pay dividends, you don't look at what happened during the crisis. You should look at other countries and how they manage their governments. One of the things that is noticed in many of these countries is that the governments did not seem to care for the people. The people often are very poor. There is no plan to create more jobs for the people to ensure that they are employed and earn a living, or opportunities to do business, etc. The government just looks after itself, and the people will have to look after themselves and see what they can do. Now, as you know, the reason for the overthrow of the Tunisian government is because a young man who was, I think, university educated could find no job. And he then started to sell vegetables in the market. And of course, he broke some rules regarding how to trade in the market. And he found his vegetable being thrown out, and he was asked to leave. And he became quite angry, not knowing anything else that he can do. He doused himself with petrol and burned himself up. And that was how the feelings were stirred against the government, and that eventually resulted in the overthrow of government. Now, if there is any lesson to be learned there, it is that you must make sure your people have a good life, earn some money, be able to live a decent life. If you don't care about them, then one fine day they are going to act and overthrow you. That is lesson number one. Always look after the people. I don't like to get into a basket and put myself up. But one of the things you notice about Malaysia on getting independence, the first Prime Minister and the second Prime Minister, both of them decided that they must create jobs for the people, or provide them with land so that they can cultivate the land and earn a living for themselves. That was how YABhg started. And so you should know all about that. YABhg was started simply because people were land hungry. There was no job, no industries in those days. And they did not know how to do business because they just didn't have the capital to do any business. And they didn't know anything about business either. But they do know about getting into the jungle, to clear the jungle and start planting maybe rubber or whatever. So the government decided that they should open up land, clear the land, and invite settlers to work on the land, to be pioneers on the land. That was the first step. Obviously, Tunku Abdul Rahman and Tun Razak cared enough about the people to want to give them a good livelihood. And of course, when we ran short of land, we still have a lot of forest, but we can't keep on chopping down the forest. So when we ran short of land, the same governments, Tun Razak decided that we should create jobs through industrialization. So industrialization was not because we want to become an industrial nation. It was simply because industries create more jobs per square mile than agriculture. If you have a hectare of land, then it can support maybe one person. But on the same hectare of land, you can put up a factory and employ 100 people. But then, of course, you need to have people to invest. Since Malaysians in those days knew very little about manufacturing. We had to depend upon foreign investors, and foreign investors were attracted by cheap labor, and they came here to set up factories and create employment for the people in Malaysia. That was the only thing that the government wanted. The government was not after earning some tax revenue from the investors. In fact, as you know, we gave them a tax-free holiday for 10 years. They don't have to pay any tax at all, because the government at that time only wanted to see the citizens of this country employed and having a good income, a decent income. And indeed, that policy was so successful that eventually we ran short of workers. As you know, we had to allow foreign workers to come here because we created more jobs than our people could fill. So that, I think, prevented people from getting too angry with the government. Of course, they are still angry with the government because the opposition parties are bent upon making people angry with the government. Wait until they become the government, then we can have a chat about that also. Because they keep on pointing out the government is a dictator, they have NEP, they are cronies, all kinds of things. They want to make people angry, but not everyone would be taken in by their arguments. Instead, a lot of people gain from the policy of creating jobs that they were supportive of the government. One young man came up to me just now and said that he was very happy because the government's policy helped him get a good education and a job. So he is not going to throw bombs at the government. In fact, they will get very angry with any bomb throwers who may aim at the government. So this is very important, that the government looks after the people. In many of these countries where we are seeing the uprisings, there is no real program to create jobs for the people, to create opportunities for people, to give them training on how to make money for themselves, how to do business, to have banks which lend money to them, to train them for some small business, manufacturing, or to acquire some skills or other. I may be wrong, but I didn't notice this in these countries which are providing us with a lesson. They do not do these things, and the lesson that must be learned by everyone, not just in Muslim countries, is that government must care for the people. You are there not because it is grand to be in the government, it is grand to become Prime Minister. You are there to work for the people, to create jobs for the people of the country, to give a better life for the people, to increase their income, as the present government is trying to do. Then I think people will be more appreciative. Although they will still have problems like racial problems, so-called unfair treatment, cronies, etc. Those things will still be there. But if you create jobs for the people, then there is less desire on the part of people to create trouble and to try and overthrow the government. You may remember that in 1969 we had race riots in this country. That was because the racial division was very, very deep. On the one hand, we have one race living in the towns and apparently doing well, and the other race not living in the town, living in the rural areas and relatively poor. These people who are poor felt that if they go to town and burn the town, they will do harm to the other group. So they went to town and they did burn up all over. The government fortunately handled that quite well, because after 2 years the rioting was stopped and people began to eat durians together again. That is also a very wise move, eating durians, because it brings people together. The smell is so good that they cannot escape from being affected, and even if they have to sit with people they don't like, they concentrate on eating the durians around one another. So after 2 years, we went back to creating jobs, inviting foreign direct investments, and training people for industries, etc., to give the people jobs. What is important is that because of the effort to get the rural people into the cities, to give them a sense of belonging, to make them feel that the cities belong to them, this has the effect of they are caring more for the cities. Before, when they went into the cities to burn the cars, they were sure that the cars did not belong to their group, their race. If they burned the shops and the houses, also they were sure that this did not belong to their group, so they burned. But today, if they decide to go to town and burn the houses and the vehicles, the likelihood is that they will be burning their own houses and their own their compatriots' vehicles. So that takes care of this problem of violent action on the part of the people. But because we have a democratic system, there will always be attempts made to instigate people against the government. This is, of course, a normal thing, and the government must be smart enough to be able to deal with this problem. As I said just now, the lessons that we see from the crisis itself is not too useful for us. But when we look into the background to the crisis, then you'll know why the crisis took place. Why did the people rise against the government and try to overthrow it by violence? And it is simply because governments did not care for the people. In the past, it was quite alright to have dictatorship and even monarchs with absolute power of life and death. People were, in those days, quite subservient. They think it was their duty to obey the ruler, whoever he may be, whether it is a ruler who rules because he was born to rule, or someone who acquires power. The people believe that they have to submit to the rulers. But today people are getting too well educated. And I'm glad I'm no longer the Prime Minister, because during my time I think people were not too well educated. I was responsible for giving them education, so the present Prime Ministers have got the result of this education. They now question everything that you do. Everything is debated. They condemn about everything. Nothing is right. And you can be sure that even if the opposition wins, other people are going to criticize the opposition as well. But we have to deal with a more intelligent, a more educated, a more sophisticated population. And with this, you really must know how to handle them. You have to be able, you have to be subtle, you have to be able to explain things to them, to argue with them, well, sometimes to hand out some money to them, which is quite good, or do something in order to win back their favor. If you don't, then then you may have an uprising on your hands. So these are the things that we can learn from what is happening in these countries. I don't have to repeat, but it is quite obvious that the previous governments, the governments which are being overthrown today or are in danger of being overthrown, is due to their own fault, their lack of regard for their own people, for the welfare of their own people. You are in the government not for your own good. You are in the government for the good of the people. In a democratic country, you are even more committed towards helping the people who voted for you. And because of that, because if you fail to do that, you fail to look after their welfare, then I think sometime or other you are going to face a mutiny, an uprising, a revolution, a civil war even, because you have failed to carry out the duties of a leader of government. So I think I will stop there. I believe you want to ask questions. So okay, I'll stop there and let you ask questions. Thank you.
University College. I would like to ask Tone. Just now you made a reference to the ethnic riots in 1969. Currently, I suppose the possibility of ethnic riots, according to you, may not be possible because KL is inhabited by all races. But at the same time, I'm just wondering whether such situations is possible due to religious animosity. Because we know that in some countries it has been happening. Our neighbor down south, it has happened. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on this. Thank you.
It is still possible, despite the efforts made to make sure that the town does not represent only one particular race, but there is a mixture of races. But when people are stirred up and they are angry about things, I think they are not too choosy about whom or what they burn or belongs to whom. They will still burn. And religious differences is a very, very dangerous thing. If people start stirring up religious sentiments, people will go wild. They will act without rhyme or reason. They may resort to violent acts and which can be very damaging. And of course, when you have that kind of situation, the country becomes unstable, and when the country is unstable, the country cannot develop. So I'm not ruling out entirely that these things can happen, but I do believe that by the efforts made under the NEP to see that at least in the urban areas, there is a mixture of races in Malaysia. We have reduced the possibility or the chances of more race riots taking place. Thank you.
Tone, my name is Mohamad. Mohamad. I move around my job, so I attend seminars. My question is this. Isn't the real lesson from what happened in the Middle East and Northern Africa is that the people today, especially the younger generation, they want the representatives of the people to form the government rather than the rulers and the dictators. Isn't that the biggest lesson? That government should be formed by representatives of the people. That's question number one. Question number two, talking of Asia, if you look at Singapore, which hardly have any resources, they develop faster than us simply because they have a very, very strong government. It is a democracy, but basically it's one party, PAP, and they progress much faster. Therefore, isn't it better that for Asian countries, a one-party system is really the best system if you want faster progress. In other words, the end should rule forever. Thank you very much.
If any party or any individual forever, definitely is bound to abuse that authority or that power. That is the lesson that we have learned through the ages. Throughout history, when someone wields absolute power, eventually he must abuse that power. And we have seen how people like Hitler, Mussolini, Toyo, and all that, they have absolute power. And they get this megalomaniac, and they want to do things which are wrong. And in the end, of course, the whole country will pay. And when you talk about Singapore, you must have noticed that of late, the people in Singapore are not too happy with this government which has brought such great prosperity to Singapore. This government will not approve any opposition. They, even if opposition parties are elected, they make sure that opposition parties cannot take the seat in parliament. They will be charged in a court and they will be found guilty and they will not be able to be in the parliament. Instead, the government party is so strong that it actually created a group within that party to be the opposition. Of course, this is a comedy. It's not real Sanjay. But after some time, people do get bored. Even if they are prosperous, they feel they are regimental. They don't live a free life. They can't even throw rubbish in the room. I mean, it's terrible. They have to come to Malaysia to do that. So, I mean, the dictatorship will never last forever. But democracy can last provided the people are nature. The people must know that there are limits to the freedom that you enjoy in the democracy. If you think you can do just about anything, then there will be some people who will feel very unhappy. And eventually either the moral quality deteriorates or collapses, or the government will face a kind of rebellion. Maybe through the process of election, the government will be overthrown. In any case, I still believe that the democratic system is the best system ever invented by man. Before that, they have tried many different systems, monarchies, dictatorships, and all kinds of systems, but they all have failed. But democracy, provided people know the limits of democracy and know how to restrain themselves, democracy will give you the best result. So that is anyway my opinion.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am here from Palestine and I'm also a student in IIL. Actually, my question is, for this time, we have noticed you many times trying to talk to the Arab leaders and also to the Muslim leaders in order to make the unity among the Muslim leaders. My question is, what have you found from these many attempts and what do you expect for the Muslim world after 10 years? Thank you very much.
Look at it as a kind of state, and they think that it's a good model. But when it comes to manage the model, I do not see difficulty about not expose themselves to being ousted through that. So if you want to copy a model, you copy that model. But don't say that model is a good model by good economy. So you want to change with your system. That is my experience when I talk to people, leaders. They admire Malaysia very much and they say nice things about Malaysia. Sometimes they even say nice things about themselves. But I don't quite agree with the way happening. So I think now they have learned a lesson and I hope that they will learn to understand that the democratic system is the best system, and you want to have a democratic system, you must be the best. You are not going to lose, then the democratic system will not work.
Originally from Islam, and recently, it's not the first time I met you, Prime Minister, but I'm also I just want to say thank you for a great night. Listening is always a great lesson to learn your great thoughts. I actually have a question since the subject is about the Middle East. I've been living in the Middle East for some time and doing special reports trying to bring the country stand. The way what happened in Egypt and the way Mubarak exit, to me, it was also, of course, it was also sad, a man who dedicated his life for his country, and suddenly the way this ended, the way it did. And of course, if he could turn the time back, I'm sure there are a lot of things he could have changed. But what do you think, in your opinion, someone as important as you are, and someone who could be in that situation for 22 years of his life dedicated, what could he have done to change that? What should he have done before, so that he could have avoided all of this happening to him? And could it, these lessons and your advice, would it be maybe something for others to follow?
You are doing the right thing. Because while serving to your country, you may not really taking care of your people. You may want to feed your country, but people are not happy with you because you are not taking jobs, you are not giving a good life, you are not improving the economy, etc., etc. And it must have been obvious to my friend Mohamad that the people did not like him. He is afraid of the people. Once when I went there to attend a meeting, he has to travel from his palace to the meeting place. It's not a very long distance, it was a mile along the road. And I was horrified to find that the road was cleared completely of traffic. There were snipers on the road. There were soldiers and police all around to make sure that nobody attacks him. Then you must know that it is not popular. I think when you know you are not popular, the best thing you should do is just to step down and leave it to other people. Of course, I always feel that when you enjoy yourself too much, that's the time to step down. But lots of people feel that if they stay on, somehow or other they can survive and maybe even create a dynasty. So that kind of thinking is what was disliked most by the people of Egypt. I was invited to speak in Alexandria. It was a very big audience for two consecutive nights. I spoke to over 2,000 people each time. But one interesting thing that happened was a question was asked of me. The question was, why did you resign? I told them, 22 years is enough. And you know what they did? They formed a party called 22 years is enough. So I think people, I know lots of people think I was very popular, but I already could hear people saying, whispering, that when is this old man going to go? Give a chance to somebody else. I could hear, they were whispering, I already could hear or I could feel. So I decided, before they put me out, I decided that I should resign. That is what was regarded as very strange in Egypt. Why is it that their leader has not resigned?
Well, look, I have to ask you whether we can have a new world order pertaining to the new colonization and also to the new, I might say, the new dominos, being dominated by the few countries through the inception or through the new way of taking over the other country with their powers and also with their new weapons. Thank you.
if you don't accept democracy, they may even invade your country to force democracy down your throat. So, if this is what the new world order is about, I don't think it is the right world order. But if you want to have a right world order where there is a democratic United Nations, that would be fine. But the United Nations is the least democratic organization in the world. And the people who dominate the United Nations call themselves democracies, but they are only domestically democratic. Internationally, they are dictators. That is what we are going to see for a long, long time.
The question is about monetary system in Muslim world, particularly in Gulf countries. Is there any lesson learned by monetary people? Because there was uprising daily, and people were subjugated, and nothing done till now. The system is still the same. Is there any lesson learned by them till now or not? Thank you.
I think governments need to have some way of enforcing its law and its rule. Now you can have a police force, but quite often they resort to the military. The military in any country is the most disciplined group of people. And of course, because they are the men with the guns, they have the power, actually have the power. And when a country is in a state of disorder, where there is almost nothing, the only group that can be relied upon to bring about order would be the people with the guns. And so we see in many instances, after a revolution, it's not the revolutionaries who form the government, it is the military which will form the government. Now, the military will always tell you, we are temporary only. Very soon we will hand over power to the civilians. But once they take power, it's so difficult to be parted from power. It's so nice to have power. So you find that you often military temporary governments do not want to hand over power to the civilians until, of course, there is another revolution. But I hope that in Egypt this will not happen, because obviously there was a need to enforce law and order in Egypt after the fall of the government of Mubarak. And who best to enforce the law? It must be the military. So at the moment, the most senior officer in the military is acting as president, and the others are actually civilians. I believe, and I've spoken to him when I was there, I believe that he's quite sincere, that he wants to hand over power the moment elections are held and a proper legislative body is set up. But the elections may create problems, because at the moment there are about 80 candidates for president. So everybody wants to have a vote. And I hope that the elections can be carried out properly, and there will be no accusation of fiddling or anti-country during the election.
My question. It seems one by one, Muslim country fell down. Okay? So the big nation, it seems offering to help them. But what happened to a Muslim country? Is it any future for Muslim country to help the brothers and sisters countries? If yes, how? If not, why? Thank you.
Have a background. Then I think the people should try to overthrow that government by one means or another. But what is worrisome is that outside powers have decided to facilitate the process. It may be that the people in general do not want to have this revolution. But if it serves the purpose of foreign powers, they are going to back the party which eventually will be more friendly towards them. That does not make the revolution a good revolution. A revolution or attempt to overthrow the government should be done by the people. Unfortunately, the government normally has got the guns, and they use the guns against the people in an uprising. But if you want to overthrow the government, I'm afraid you will have to accept bloodshed, you will have to accept being killed in the process. Many countries have freed themselves from dictators by taking the risk. But I do not like the idea of big powers moving in, throwing bombs here and there, fighting warriors, killing people, and making it their revolution, not the people's revolution. Of course, the people who are intent on overthrowing the government who feel happy with this foreign help. I hope that there is no deal between the revolutionaries and the foreign power, because there may be some quid pro quo kind of arrangements which you help me, later on I will help you. I hope this does not happen.
On the Muslim countries, lessons we learn from the crisis. So let us join hands with me to give a big applause. Saya silakan kembali kepada keluarga majelis.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the organizing committee of ICIL2011 event, we hope that you really enjoy the meal and receive enlightening input from the keynote address just now. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.